But that'd be
Dude, if
funny.
they get Pamela Voorhees, they got to make her hot. I mean, like just like such a hot woman making such an ugly child.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, I'm sure we all thought of specific examples where that happened in real life, but
Oh,
okay.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm living proof. Look at me.
Neo face. All right. On that note, welcome back to Not a Strong Start, a podcast by filmmakers who talk movies, television, and born from attractive parents, but we turned out ugly. I'm your host, Kickable Face.
I am not your host, Neo Bullface.
There
I'm also not your host, Punchable Face.
Yeah.
you go.
I'm going with the Muay Thai, got the knees and the
Kneeable
elbows.
face.
There you go. I'm just
You don't
kicking
That's
it.
actually
deserve
really
my
because you're the tallest. You don't have any idea what kind of knee has to knee you in the face, dude. You
Yeah,
need like an Anunnaki giant or something like
seriously.
that.
I feel
That's
like
when you
mine is
know.
like the least level of effort. Like if
Yeah.
I'm just on the ground, they just go and they just like barely kick me and they keep it moving.
It's a more disrespectful because like you don't deserve my fist or my foot. Take my knee.
That's true. That's the holy grail. So in this week's episode, we're going to talk about some of the top action opening sequences. So I know we did one for a horror movie, some of the best openings to a movie. We're going to do action movies this time. But first, we're going to hit you with the current event.
Re-releasing old movies to movie theaters is not a new concept. It's
Right.
something that's been done for a very long time. But feel that like over the last like couple of years, over the last few years, the rate is increasing where it's becoming a more common thing. With the more recent ones is we're about to have Aliens and The Mummy re-released. And I think we just had Spider-Man 2 and The Phantom Menace re-released not too long ago.
It
So
wasn't
it's
Spider-Man 2 like the number two movie in the theaters right now.
yeah, that says a lot about what came out.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But yeah, it seems like the rate is increasing, and now you're getting like double movies re-releasing, where before it seemed to be more rare. Every once in a while, this is happening. So the trend is increasing. What are your guys' thoughts on, first of all, the re-releasing of old movies to theaters and the increase that it's happening at now? Kevin, we'll start with you.
I mean, I love seeing movies that I was too young to go see in the theaters, like back in the theaters, like if it was like, oh, they're putting Back to the Future back in the theaters. I'm like, oh, that's a cool experience because that's one of my favorite movies. But at the same time, it's like there's not like it feels like they're just trying to resell you something. And why don't you just make better movies? Why are you re-releasing a movie in the theaters? Make better movies to get me in there. And it's difficult enough to get in the theaters now anyway, with just like how busy we are. And like with the option to stream things at home, why not just watch that movie at home? I think it's kind of I mean, it's cool if people go do it, but it feels like a waste of money to me.
What about you, Dan?
Yeah, I feel the same way, man. Like, I understand why they do it sometimes for like those big ones, like what Kevin said. If you're bringing Back to the Future, something like that from like the 80s or maybe early 90s, and you're bringing it back for like the new generation experience in the movie theater. I've never been one to go really do that and go rewatch a movie. I could just watch it at home, especially as
Hmm.
technology is getting better. We don't need to see Bridget Jones's Diary getting re-released for the fourth time in theaters.
Or
Like,
do
it
we?
feels it feels a lot like they've done part two. Well, now part two, definitely. I'm gonna wear it with the 3D glasses. But part
Seven
one,
times in the theater for that one.
yes, that's where
Yeah.
we put that. That's where we draw the line in the sand there, Kevin. We do not watch the first one and go back and we watch it in movie theaters. So I don't know, man. I'm not the demographic for those. Like again, like what Kevin said, it's like we have limited time. It's a lot more costly now to go to movie theaters. I literally own it and I can watch it in 4K. So yeah, I'm good.
What have you ever like went back and saw a movie in the movie theaters that was like re-released? Have you ever done that?
I did. I think it was Alien that I saw it re-released like
Oh, that's cool.
years ago. But like I don't. I just yeah. I mean, I can just watch in the comfort of my home.
I did it for Halloween, the
Ooh, how
original
was it?
Halloween. I think it was some anniversary, but I saw it on Halloween in Pasadena, like close to where they filmed the some of the original locations, and that was fun because that was a different experience. I'm like, I
Yeah,
think like with horror fans, it's a much different experience because
yeah,
everybody's there screaming and like dressed up in
yeah.
costumes and stuff like that. It's like more like a viewing party rather than we're just gonna go, to the movies.
That's how the movie The Room seems like it would be. If you go and you watch
Yeah.
that in theaters, there's such a rabid fan base that then it would make it fun. But most of the movies that they release aren't like that. It doesn't feel like a viewing party necessarily.
Like
More
like
just
Rocky Horror Picture Show or something like
yes,
that.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah, I've actually never gone to rewatch a movie that was re-released at all. Like kind of what Dan was saying, I'd rather just watch it at
Why?
home.
That's so funny hearing from you, Jose. That's okay.
Because of glasses, you feel like an
Yeah, the
entirely different
glass. You were
person.
very pretentious. I have never ever seen a re-release of a movie in the theater. In fact, I pity them.
Yeah, well, I can just watch it at home. I
Yeah.
feel like this is the next step, the evolution of the Hollywood laziness. It was like, okay, let's forget original ideas. Let's just remake and reboot everything. And that's been happening for a long time. And they're like, you know what? We need to evolve. Let's go to the next step. Forget remaking and rebooting. Let's just actually release the original movies again and make some extra money off of that. So that's kind of what it feels like. I don't feel it's a concept that should go away. Like I feel there are situations where it makes sense to do a re-release. I think, for example, if we're getting a new version of that movie, of that franchise coming out, and the old one was like 20, 30 years ago, then okay, maybe you
Mm.
want to re-release it, kind of bring in a new audience, refresh the old audience. That might be a good time to do it at that point. As you mentioned, if it's like those cult classics where it is kind of like a viewing party, that is also a different story. So I think there is room for it. There is space for it, but knowing Hollywood and what Hollywood likes to do, they're gonna beat this like a dead horse. Pretty soon, we're gonna be getting a re-release every month of an old movie, and
Yeah, but I
that
mean,
that's just too much.
they also have all those other options where you can just go see like movies in the park. Like when they set up like outdoor movie screens, you can always catch a classic out there. There's so many options out here to do that. I mean, like just go do that. Why you
They
gotta?
have the Jaws one. Have you seen that? Where they're like sitting in
Yeah.
boats or something. Like that
Oh
looks
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
I
It
totally do
was so
that
cool.
one.
I remember just like up at Griffith Park, they used to do like the Great Horror Movie Camp Out. It was like
Mm.
every other Friday night. They at the old LA abandoned zoo. They used to do horror movies every Friday night there, and it was just like the coolest thing. So just go do that. But I mean, why wait? Like it just seems like lazy. Exactly, just exactly what Jose said. Is completely lazy and trying to make a buck off everybody. But unless it's worth it, like they just had the anniversary for Avengers Endgame, right? Like that would have been like a cool thing to see in the theaters again because that was a fun experience doing that, and I could see them re-releasing it just for that because the Marvel movies haven't been really that great lately. Anyway,
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I think a re-release for like an anniversary of a really big movie, like a record-setting movie, something like an Endgame at
hmm
that time was a record-setting movie, is a good scenario also to release these movies. I think another good scenario that's actually beneficial is if maybe you had a movie that originally did not do well, that's kind of flown under the radar, but has slowly picked up some steam since it's released and kind of gathered a following. Then maybe that type of movie you might want to re-release in the theater now that it picked up a following because originally it didn't do too well.
yeah.
And it was maybe before its time, let's say. That might be another example of a time to release those movies.
Like a typical cult classic, because that's what cult classics are. They're movies that didn't do well in the theater, and then everybody just loved it at home, and it became popular in home release.
Mm, good. All right. So before we get into our main topic, here's George with an ad break.
Hey everyone, let's take a moment to talk about where I've been getting these new Not a Strong Start t-shirts from. Head on over to itsnas.threadless.com, the only place where you can get Not a Strong Start merch, whether it's our newly designed mascot or just your favorite movie logo now with some Nas flair. You can rep your Nas love on tee, hoodie, mug, rug, and so much more. So get yours today. Just click on that link below and have yourself a strong start. Have a not a strong start, have a start that's strong, but not so strong. You know what to do.
Where is he?
He's right there in your pocket.
George, how
And
did you get into my pants?
and he jumped in your back pocket.
Yeah.
All
He
right.
acts very nicely.
Yeah, yeah, but he just whispers it so you don't hear it very much.
I thought it was gonna be like a filter. You know, people put those filters on Snapchats, and like a person jumps up behind you on there, and
Oh, yeah,
it's
like the Shrek.
just
Have you
like
seen that one with
George
the
just
Shrek?
coming
Yeah.
in. Yeah,
The
Just
Shrek
George.
and then the
Yeah.
judgmental Jesus, I think is the other one.
Yeah. All right. So again, we're gonna be getting into our main topic of the best opening scenes of action movies. So why do you guys think that's important? Do you guys think it's really important to an action movie? Like, is that what kind of, if you get sold on an opening sequence that's so good for the action movie, are you automatically sold for the rest of the movie?
I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
think
always a good thing.
Hmm.
yeah, if it nails its opening scene and has a badass action sequence, then I was able to say, okay, this is what I have to look forward to. You've sold me right away from the start. Now, what you do after you sold me, that's a different story
Hmm.
because now you've set expectations for the rest of the movie. So
Yeah.
it can backfire if you can't live up to that opening sequence. But that opening sequence, you can sell me and get my full attention within those first 10 minutes.
Yeah, I feel like it's more important in horror movies to set the tone, but like any movie, your opening scene should set the tone for your film. But like Jose said, you want to open up on an action sequence, it can't be the best action sequence in the film. But I know, like when you guys pitched me this episode, I was like going through action movies, and a lot of some of my favorite action movies don't open up with a like a cold action scene. You know what I mean? So I don't feel like it's necessary, but I mean, it's always great to I love being overstimulated when I watch movies. That's why I like exciting movies, and I like being excited right off the bat. It gets you excited for the rest of the movie where you're not like waiting for like, all right, when's the action gonna kick in? You get a nice little taste, like a little appetizer, you know what I mean, of action. Somebody gets punched in the face. You know, it's just it's a great setup to get you invested for the rest of the movie. It's just the rest of the movie better live up to it.
I would say it's like those nice the breadsticks with the olive oil they bring you or
Hmm.
the chips and salsa
Oh,
and they're like
chips and salsa.
yeah,
Perfect, bro.
like I'm
Yeah.
still, I'm still gonna stay there for the meal. But if you impress me with that chips and salsa, now I'm excited
You know
for
it's
what
Guys,
else you got
fire.
on board.
we
Yeah.
Yeah.
should we should make an action movie called Chips and Salsa.
Yeah.
Yes. Every scene, somebody's eating chips and salsa, whether it's in the
Yeah.
background or the main characters.
The first shot is just a chip going in the salsa, and then it's just punches and explosions in
Look
It
at that
has to end
form.
like that. Yeah. And then when you see the chip and the salsa, there's like blood that gets splattered on the chip.
Mhm.
Oh, I can picture the whole like fight scene where the guy dips it into the salsa and then fights another guy and the salsa never falls off the chip. It's onto the
It's
chip the
getting
whole
tossed in
time.
the air and he catches it.
Yeah.
It's like ballet.
And
I
then
think
like
I think the most opening is so important for movies that are either more smaller budget or movies that we just never really heard of. Like if you're going through like Netflix, you're going through something like that, like Tubi, like something you just kind of like
Mhm.
flip, like quickly flip it, and you see like the thumbnail of the image, and you think maybe, and especially like action. Like I'm kind of in the mood for something new of action that I haven't seen. So you'll tend to watch something that maybe you don't recognize any of the actors, or maybe it's a movie again you just never heard of. That opening sequence matters so much. If they don't grab me, I'm out and I'm on to the next one. I'm waiting for that opening sequence to grab me and keep me enthralled. So,
Mhm.
I think an advantage when it comes to action movies, for it's like when we talked about horror, the opening sequence, the biggest thing you can take away from it is it sets the mood and tone of the horror for the rest of the movie. If they can nail that opening sequence, you kind of know what type of horror they're gonna deliver. If it's gonna
mm,
be relying on, on quick scares and loud noises, or is it more atmospheric? It helps in setting the tone. I think with action movies, more than telling you what kind of action you're gonna get, it can help establishing either a villain or a hero. It kind of, how badass are they? You can
Mhm.
see that in that first scene, either how much of a threat this villain is, because in that first scene, they pulled off this crazy sequence, or how badass is this hero because in that opening scene they were able to overcome whatever was thrown at them. So I think with action movies, it works more about establishing a character or two.
yeah, I agree. So, let's get into some examples. Since Kevin, you're a guest today, let's go with lead us off.
I mean, I think I'm just gonna go with the obvious, get out of the way. Uh Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones.
Hmm.
Especially when we're talking about, setting the tone of the movie with the action sequence. And I love those films because the movie always starts at the end of a different adventure that he's on. So it's not spoiling, the rest of the movie. It's just it picks up right, and there's no fighting in that sequence. It was a really cool introduction to him going into the temple, like figuring out the booby traps, and then running out of there, then running from the tribe. It was just like a fun and exciting way to introduce a character for, a new time. And it was for the first time. And I would say that that's probably one of my favorite openings of a action movie.
Yeah, what makes that one so good is that it's his presence
Mm-hmm.
that gets introduced first. You don't even
Mm-hmm.
see him. You just
Mm-mm.
see like the shadow, you see like his arm, you see the whip when it steps aside. They
Yeah.
build up this character without even seeing him yet.
Yep.
That's what makes that opening so freaking awesome. And
Putting the map together, you
yeah,
see a
man, all
silhouette. And
that. So
yeah.
like the way that they introduce him, where he's like this, like he's a man amongst men, sort of
Mm-hmm.
like you kind of see him as like this godlike type of action hero. And then when we see the temple, that opening is still my favorite scene, I think, of all of Indiana Jones
Oh
movies, is
yeah.
that one. Because it's like, there's so many memorable lines and things from it. The Jurassic Park or the Indiana Jones ride is like based off of that. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
see like the temple and everything. Great opening, man. Absolutely. That's probably my favorite, I think, opening out of all of them.
What's great about it is like it didn't rely on explosions or fighting. It
Mm-mm.
was like, and it was still exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I think the what was good about that opening scene is this was the movie not sitting there telling you like, okay, we're gonna explain to you how competent and how cool this guy is, and we're gonna have other characters tell you. They're like, no, forget all that. We're just gonna show you.
Mm-hmm.
You visually see what this character can do in the aura of this character, and then we'll continue on with the rest of the movie.
Mm-hmm. I agree. All right, Jose. Hit us up with the second one.
All right. I think I'll go with another obvious one here that was probably going to be mentioned at some point. And I'm going to go with the opening scene of The Dark Knight.
Mm-hmm.
We get this really cool heist scene. Uh, First of all, the reveal of this was very well done. They have like the Joker, posing as just like some hired gun by the Joker. Uh, but then, you realize by the end of it, it was like the Joker was the one right there all along, but you don't know that as an audience member between it. So you already know, okay, Joker in charge, hiring. Let's see what he executed here. And then on top of that, it ends up being a mob bank. So it's not even just a regular heist. So then now you just upped it up a level
Mm-hmm.
because now the bank is run by criminals too. And even their tellers is coming out with shotguns, ready to like fight back here. So I think with the betrayal and the manipulation that you see in the scene where everything was established, where one was set to kill the other, which was set to kill the other, you really get a good picture and the tone set of the kind of threat and the cerebral aspects of this version of the Joker that you're gonna get in this one. Not only was again the cerebral part of planning all of this and having all these contingency plans in there, but then him also physically being part of it. So he's not just a planner. He will, execute the plans himself. So right off of that opening scene, we haven't seen Batman, we haven't seen anyone else. You're like, this guy is a threat,
Mm-hmm.
and you want to see more from this character for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I like how it's smart that they make him where you start to see one pick off the next. So like not only do you see like the ruthlessness of him, you see the intelligence of him. So it's a way of again showing you rather than telling you. I thought it was a great introduction. They even did a shout out, like wasn't the mask that he was holding in that one from like some famous comic book or something, right?
No, it was what was it? A Kelly mask. What was it? It was a famous clown, wasn't it?
Oh, was it the Gacy one? Is that what it was? No, right?
No, that's William H. Casey. No, not
Yeah,
William H.
yeah.
Macy.
No, yeah.
The serial killer.
Yeah.
I forget. I think it was a famous clown from decades ago. I think. I could be wrong.
Okay.
But you know what's funny is that clown, I believe that clown mask was also once originally picked to be the original Halloween mask.
That's interesting.
It was something
Huh.
Kelly. I think it was Kelly, or it was a mask that was used in like the old
Okay, I
Batman.
have I
Yeah.
actually have it here. Yeah. It was the mask worn by an opera singer in an episode of the original Batman TV
Yeah.
series
That's
called
what
Okay.
it
The
was. I knew it
Joker's
was off of
Wild
something.
Okay.
I knew it was
from the
off of
60s.
something. Yeah, I knew it was off of something old
Hmm.
school, but okay. So I got to get into mine. So I love this opening so much. This is Kill Bill Volume 1. So
Okay.
you open up, you see the villain again. We barely see him. We just see his feet walking. You see her all bloody, battered and all that. And he puts the gun to her and she says, the baby's yours. Then we see the gunshot. Think she dies. And then we cut into the opening sequence of her fighting Vivica A. Fox, which is one of the coolest action scenes I've seen in a long time. It's
Hmm.
happening right there in the kitchen, which is very clever. You have a lot of great Tarantino dialogue, but even when the daughter comes in and you have to like stop and you see her walking in from the front, from getting dropped off from the school bus, and you see like the high tension, but then they're trying to play it cool in front of the daughter until she goes back and they keep fighting until she finally unalives Vivica A. Fox, and then the daughter comes out and sees it. It's amazing, man. Like that whole sequence, like he really plays. Not only is there really cool shots, because we get like a really cool bird's eye view as you're looking down on top of them, and you kind of see her walking through in the kitchen area. Not only is it really clever dialogue, but the action sequences, the choreography is amazing, and then to build up with the tension of the daughter by throwing her in there and then causing you to stop, and then you're right back into action mode again. You have to stop and then pause, just playing with your emotions. I love that, man, and I'm a huge fan of badass females. Like as long as
Hmm.
they get it right, huge fan of it. This one completely set the tone with the bride.
Do you guys like it when they introduce the villain first or the hero first for an action sequence? I mean, I love Kill Bill.
I'm good either way, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. With that one, it was kind of both technically. I mean, he was walking, but you see her face. So
Hmm.
it goes either way, but I don't mind it as long as it's clever. Like The Dark Knight, they used the villain first, which makes sense. But also that was the sequel. So we already know who Batman is. So you don't
Yeah.
need to open up with Batman again. And Indiana Jones, it needed to be Indiana Jones because he's the reason why we're watching this. The villain is not as important. So it really just depends.
Yeah, I
Long
think
answer.
if it's if it's a franchise and this is a character that you're gonna use throughout multiple movies, or a character that's from a known property that people are well aware of, then I feel like for that first one you should start with the hero. And then for the subsequent ones, you've already introduced, we know the hero, now you want to kind of start with the villain. If it's a one-off movie, I think it could go either way as long as it's well done.
Yeah, exactly. And in Kill Bill's case, it's called Kill Bill.
Hmm.
So you introduce with Bill. So like it kind of makes sense a little bit. But again, you see her, so it's kind of like a dual thing. But
I'm gonna go with Thor Ragnarok. I,
mm,
I I know that's really random, but I just thought, when they made that movie, they completely changed the tone of, how they were going to be showing Thor. Like they made him a little bit more comical, but that opening sequence when he was, what was it, Surtur? When you see him like prisoner, and you get a
Mhm.
really good sense of the tone for the rest of the film, because he's tied up in front of this evil looking devil dude, and the whole time he's like monologuing. He's like, wait, because he's spinning while he's being hung. He's like, okay, there we are. Like it was such a great, fun opening sequence, and then it turns out that he was just doing it to be interrogated so he could get some answers, and then he busts out and he just does this crazy awesome action sequence fighting all the army and everything like that. I just thought that was because that's like the third movie. His first two movies weren't that great, but then you open up this third one with a new tone and a really cool action sequence. It was just a fun way to reintroduce a character that's already been established, and it almost felt like you were meeting him for the first time, really.
yeah. I thought it was great. The movie was fantastic. I think what was great about the Ragnarok opening so much is because it completely flipped the tone of his movies, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it was very smart by Taika to set that tone, right? Like
Yeah,
with the question you asked about, is it better if it's a hero or it's a villain that they introduce? Well, it all depends on the context of the movie. In
yeah.
this particular case, it felt like almost like the tone was introduced. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like
Yeah.
here's the type of movie that you guys are gonna get, so that way we got used to it right away. So that way when we saw the Guardians type humor, we automatically knew what we're getting ourselves into, and then our expectations started adjusting immediately. I thought that was a very clever
And
intro,
it was
man.
almost like the Indiana Jones thing, how you open up on the end of the
Mm-hmm.
previous adventure that you didn't really see, and then it ends up playing a big factor in the end. But that entire movie was just completely entertaining from beginning to end for me,
Yeah.
and I just thought that was a great way to have an opening sequence. For an already established character that nobody necessarily cared about, and all of
Mhm.
a sudden they just made like now he's like one of my favorite characters on the team.
Yeah.
I agree.
Mhm.
In a way, it was a reintroduction of the hero, the
Hmm.
new version of the hero. All right, for my next one, I have Spectre from the
Okay.
007 series.
Mhm.
First of all, so much happens in this in this action sequence. We cover so much area and so many things. You go from like nonchalant, smooth assassination, like even falling off the roof and landing perfectly, like on the couch and just like dusting off and like walking to like a big foot chase scene through a large parade to a helicopter battle to then him flying away in a helicopter. You just cover so much ground in this like action sequence. And I think what made it really work is this scene itself, it it's the embodiment of Bonds in one scene as a whole. You get the smooth, then the gritty, then you go back to the smooth, then a little bit more of the gritty. So it was like the epitome of this version of Bonds all in one scene. And I
Hmm.
think that's what makes this opening scene work, besides the scene itself being like really cool.
Yeah, I felt like with Daniel Craig's 007, it's one of the most outlier interpretations we've seen of the 007 because he was the most like very grungy, very dirty, very physical fighting, less smooth, more than any interpretation we've seen of him. And I thought that's what made it so unique and interesting. It was a way of kind of rebooting the franchise and giving us a different feel for it rather than just another smooth talking guy that's just in a suit doing
Hmm.
cool things, you know? And I thought that opening that you mentioned was really good and a good way of displaying that.
Yeah, I was never a huge James Bond fan growing up. My dad and my brother were. They were always watching the movies, but I mean, that was before they did really crazy action sequences and really like good,
Hmm.
it was always a little bit boring, or maybe a little bit more above me than I could handle as a kid. But I do like the newer versions, and I'm excited to see who's up next for James Bond, dude.
The
Wasn't
rumor is Aaron Taylor Johnson,
Kick
but
Ass.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but he hasn't confirmed it. But
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
that's the rumor right now,
I could
which
see
I
it.
think is a good pick.
Yeah, he's good. I like him. Okay. All right. So, yeah, I have a ton to go through, but I'm gonna go with one that was really fun. Okay. So this
I
one, I don't think this is gonna be what you expect, Kevin, unless,
Okay.
or maybe it is. Um, I went with total 90s, total action opening sequence. Is it in line with what you think?
Oh no, not absolutely
Oh,
not
okay,
not at
okay.
all.
Uh,
Now I wish that I chose the one that I thought you were gonna pick.
okay. Well, we still have a third round. We got time. I went with Speed.
Oh yeah, I
So,
have that on here.
yeah,
Yep.
so I
Yeah,
love
I
Speed.
had that on there too.
Because Dennis Hopper is so good. Like he was sort of like the original kind of Nick Cage almost, where like he's just zany, he's out there. It's like a ridiculous performance, but it freaking works. Sort of like how Christopher Walken is, where it's like way out there, and he just completely
Wait, did you
shoot
say
up.
Nick Cage?
No, I'm saying it's like a Nick Cage sort
Oh,
of where
okay,
they're
okay,
out there.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
like, he
Dennis
was in
Hopper.
this.
No.
He played the
Dennis Hopper,
bomb.
yes. But Dennis Hopper, though, like he ate up this villain so much, and it could have been such a flat performance. But the fact that you balance that off of Keanu's kind of surface level acting,
Hmm.
let's say, even though we
Hmm.
love Keanu, but he's very kind of monotone with the way he does his acting. Dennis complements him so well because you need that high energy. And then when you have, the Jeff Daniels, so that opening sequence where they're in that they have the hostages in the elevator and it gets, like
Shoot the hostage.
yeah, when you have that, you have this great partnership that you see, and you see them arguing over the age-old question of having a hostage, done. Like, do you shoot them? Like, do you incapacitate them and get them out? Like, what do you do? And you see that playing a factor later into the movie. So it was really smart how they did that, but it was totally typical 90s, over the top. Like, holding an elevator hostage is so ridiculous and so small scale in the grand scheme of things. But yet in the movie, they threw us a bunch of like kind of like the background music, the high intense
First,
music.
bam,
It
bam,
had
bam,
us
bam,
hype.
bam, bam.
Bam, bam. I
Dun,
still
dun,
do
dun,
that
dun, dun,
song.
dun. It was like that. That's all the action music was. Dun, 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 dun. You know what I
Dun,
love
dun,
about that
dun.
opening
Yeah.
sequence though of Speed, and and like just from a filmmaking aspect, is like when they're doing the opening credits and it's just the camera going down the elevator shaft with all the, and it was like almost felt like a repeating thing. But I'm
Yeah.
like, that has to be. I've always curious how they filmed that because I don't think it was digital. I don't think they were that great with digital technology yet. And I'm just like, did they do a miniature? Did they actually film that? Because it was like repetitive. I'm like, how many floors is that? They kept on going through all the credits, and
Hmm.
it seemed like a really intricate loop sequence. And I was trying to find where the cut was, or if they were just repeating the same, couple of floors over and over again. But I agree. I had that on my list as such a great opening for because it did both. It introduced the hero and the villain in the opening sequence. And
It's
it
always
was
the
yeah.
best to do that because when you set them up, and it's always like, well, the villain kind of wins in the beginning. It's a
Mhm.
great way to introduce to the audience how much has the villain grown. I mean, the hero grown. Has he
Yeah.
evolved? Can he now outdupe the villain? Like, that's always a great way to kind of introduce them and set up that the rivalry between them.
And the tension and suspense in that scene was really good too for
Yeah,
just an elevator. Like nobody
just an
like
elevator.
fuck it, let that elevator fall. Those people were stupid anyway. But it still kept you on the edge of your seat.
Yeah.
Like you remember when the elevator is like almost falling, and you're trying to
Yep.
pull people out, and you're just like thinking that their legs are gonna cut off, and you're just like, come on, just jump, just go. Oh, just that lady, just fucking let her die. Like
Yeah.
it was a fun opening
And the
scene. Yeah.
music. Bam, bam,
Yeah.
bam, bam, bam. I do that
Dude,
when
that
I'm
was
like
in
just in
every
traffic trying to pull between cars.
Yeah,
Ding,
That's my
ding,
theme
ding, ding,
song.
ding, ding. I
they
do that when I'm driving all the time now.
Oh
Whenever I'm
yeah.
merging onto
Yeah.
a highway in Los Angeles, I'm
Always.
like ding,
Always.
ding, 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 ding,
Ding,
ding.
ding, ding. And you look over and you see like the guy next to you doing the same thing. Ding, 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 ding.
Dude, I just want to drive next to a city bus and just hold out a piece of paper that just says "bomb on bus." They do.
Pointing at it.
we need a team up between Dennis Hopper's character and Castro Troy. Just have
Yes,
them
man.
team up.
Yes. Yes. All right.
Like they shouldn't
So
even give him any other name. Just call him Dennis Hopper. Like that's basically who he's playing anyway. He's just Dennis
that's
Hopper.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's such a fun villain to
Oh
watch.
my God, man. Yeah. Yeah.
Agreed.
I don't know if you guys ever seen Apocalypse Now, but he was so good in that movie.
That Deadpool opening scene, that highway
That was
Unbelievable.
scene.
on
Well,
my
Yep.
first of all, how they use the opening, the credits as that frozen action moment, and they're going through it, and then
Hmm.
it takes you to the beginning of the action sequence. It was such a fun way to set the tone. And then it was, I mean, the action in that is just so like you're just like fuck yeah when you're watching it. I love action movies that make you do that. Get your adrenaline going. It's just so dope. And it's just unreal, like it's just dudes getting thrown from the car and just splattering on the highway sign. You know what I mean? Shit like that is just so cool. And it was just a fun opening sequence to really show you the character.
I think what made that scene so good is that it shows you everything you're going to get for the rest
Mm-hmm.
of the movie. You
Mm-hmm.
see the type of humor, you're gonna see the breaking of the fourth wall, you're gonna see the level of violence and the ridiculousness all within that first scene.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyone new coming in who isn't very familiar with the character, hasn't read the comic books, hasn't seen any of that stuff, you know exactly what you're gonna get the rest of the movie just from watching that opening scene. So I think that's what made it, besides it just being a badass scene,
Mm-hmm.
it painted a perfect picture of what the rest of the movie was going to look like.
And
Yeah.
it's fun too, especially with the opening credit sequence, because action movies are usually like fast in your face. They just froze a moment in an action sequence and let the audience explore it. And you're just like, what is going on here? I'm like, oh, I see. Oh, this is hilarious. It's such a great
Yeah,
way.
man. And tying in so many jokes in with just like the opening font of like the introductions, like the names and like
Yeah.
the job titles, like
Yeah.
so clever, man. It was
God's
so
favorite
clever.
idiot. Like
Yes.
a CGI character.
Yes, man. Like it was awesome because it really brings down that fourth wall, of course, which is what Deadpool's known for. But it was
Mhm.
such a great way to introduce us. Like they always say, great introduction is we can figure out the character like very quickly within the
Mm-hmm.
first like 30 seconds to 2 minutes. If I can read everything I need to know about this character in the first couple minutes, that's a great freaking introduction. But really, that 30 seconds is that sweet spot. Deadpool completely hit us with that without even really having to say anything. It's just the visuals, so you know the director themselves is bringing in the humor along with Deadpool himself. So yeah, man, good call. All right.
For my last one, I'm gonna go with Baby Driver.
Okay.
That's a
I
good
mean,
one.
what's one thing that can hype a scene up? And we kind of already addressed this a little bit with
Music.
the music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, and this scene just delivers a good combo of music and action together. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When he's like in the car, as we don't even see the heist happening, we just see a little glimpse through the window. We're just kind of in the car as he is prepping to be the getaway driver, and he's got the music on. I was getting hyped with him in that
Mm-hmm.
scene. I was really like, "Let's go, let's get out of here." Um, and again, you don't need to see the heist in this scene for it to be good because the action is all about the driving and the getaway and the chase scene. And I gotta say, even till this day, uh, that car chase scene probably holds up as probably one of the best I have seen since maybe like the Bourne series, where you had a
Mm.
really good car chase scene there. And I watched it not too long ago, and still entertaining sometimes just to watch that scene and the way they pulled off the action and the car maneuvering, where it was like it seemed extreme, but it never seemed out of the realm of realism. You know, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a Fast and the Furious like chase scene where it was just like,
The car
okay,
turns into a rocket ship, and they have
yeah,
superpowers now.
yeah. As you're watching it, you're like, I can see a very highly skilled driver pulling all this off.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And of course it's directed by Edgar Wright, so his
Mm-hmm.
editing, his chops, his quick cuts, that stuff only went with it only went with the action that we're seeing and complemented it so damn well, man. So good call on that one. One that I went with that I felt like we had to mention on this episode is The Matrix. The way that they
Okay.
introduce the Matrix and we introduce Trinity and we see her fighting a bunch of dudes that look almost exactly the same, the agents all dressed up in the suits, and you see her doing all these jumping over the rooftop into the other one. You see her doing these feats of human capabilities that we can't do, right? So it's like that superhero type levels that she's doing. And then just at the very end, when you see her just answer the phone call and you hear like the beeping, and then all of a sudden she like disappears, and it's like, whoa, we're just sitting there watching at home, like, what am I watching? That intro was so huge though, because it showed us and introduced us to a world that we know looks like ours, but clearly they're doing rules and things that aren't. So that's why it's like, okay, they're going in a very different direction with this, and it was very world creating that they did that would they were able to introduce with just doing a lot of cool like badass action sequences. And again, female badass, and we saw her kicking ass. Final round, we're gonna do a quick honorable mention. So, what's one that you want to give a quick shout out that had a great opening? So, Kevin.
Well, I just thought, even though it's not an action movie, but it was technically an action sequence, The Goonies with the
Hmm.
prisoner escape, and then the car ride, like, when they're being chased by the
Hmm.
cops, they use that as an opportunity to introduce every single character of the movie as the police chase is going through their town. I just thought that was a really cool way to introduce the characters of your movie that are like in an action sequence that they're observing.
Hmm.
And then like um, in the Star Wars universe, the prequels got a lot of flack. They got a lot of everybody's making fun of them. But the Revenge of the Sith opening sequence was such a fun. It was like I think it's like one of my favorite opening sequences of a Star Wars movie, and the prequels were always shit on. But
Hmm.
I just thought that was just a great the rescue mission sequence, and
Hmm.
Obi-Wan and Anakin in their prime. It was just fun to watch.
Yeah.
And Saving Private Ryan.
Yes, Saving Private Ryan.
D-Day.
Amazing.
Those are my
Amazing.
honorable mentions.
For honorable mention, I'll do one. I think it was the entire opening sequence of like Face Off. You know, we get first of all we get to see the conflict right away in the carousel, like little like couple of minutes, so we see right away why there's that hate in there. And then we also get to see how unhinged this character of Castro Troy is
Mhm.
when he's dressed as the priest, going through just going wild and all stuff. Where there's like a bomb set up, ready to do things in there. So like we established a lot right from the beginning of kind
Mhm.
of how out there this character is, and then also the conflict. So I think that was well done. That's my
And Face
honorable
Off
mention.
2. We got
Mhm.
Face Off 2 coming.
Hopefully they have a good
Yeah.
opening. We'll see. I went with. I'm giving a shout out to the rest of the Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom, and the Last Crusade because
Mhm.
those openings. One thing about Indiana Jones that they captured so well was the openings, and even though the first one, in my opinion, was still the best intro, I mean, you had Club Obi-Wan, man. Like the
Yeah.
great thing is that Spielberg always wanted to direct his own James
James
Bond
Bond.
movie. They didn't let him, so he did his own by doing Indiana Jones, right? Which is why I think in the second one it's so great because they literally put him in a 007 like suit and create like a whole 007 scene. So you
He
get
said
like,
that was the exact reason
yeah,
why he opened up that specific movie
exactly.
like that.
Exactly. So that's why I love it. And then when you have Kate Capshaw singing Anything Goes, basically doing like
Mhm.
the whole sequence and everything. I'm
Mhm.
like, dude, what a great opening, man. And then the Last Crusade, where we see the introduction where he gets the hat and everything, and you got Young
Yeah.
River Phoenix. Like
The train,
fantastic.
and that
The
was
whole
so cool.
train, man, it was so good. And then just of course, shout out to Jurassic Park. Shooter!
Yeah.
Shooter! Do you see just the eye of the
Yeah.
Velociraptor? I'm like, man, that is so Spielberg. Like,
Mhm.
I love it. Yeah, I loved it. But that was it. So shout out for that. So thank you for watching another episode of Not a Strong Start. Please like, subscribe, comment, share on the YouTube channel, Not a Strong Start. You can listen to us anywhere you listen to your podcast. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter, Not a Strong Start. I'm your host, Kickable Face. You can follow me at King_Sangre.
And I am not your host, Neo Bullface, and you can find me at This Is Mi Nombre on Instagram.
And I'm the person here who has the most punchable face. And you can find me at Twin Pines Video.